Hello and welcome to Circle of Eden, everybody. I am Jenness White, and I am joined today by my co-host Jordan Oliver, and we have an amazing segment for you today. And we're going to be talking about events that pretty much have a media blackout that are going on in Syria. And so we have a special guest today, but before I bring him on, Jordan, thank you so much for being on today and helping me, because one of the things that you and I have always done and strive to do is get the truth out by talking to people who are actually boots on the ground, because there's some incredible missions going on and organizations working behind the scenes that are telling us things that are going on, especially in the Middle East.
Yes, Jen, thank you so much for having me on today. I am really looking forward to this deep dive and getting more info on Syria in particular. So
yeah, I am as well. And we hope you, as the viewers, everybody, that this interview today blesses you, and you as well can become more knowledgeable about events that are going on. And so our guest for today, Jordan, is Steve Slepcevic. And he has a team at Strategic Response Partners, also called SRP, and they have just returned from Syria, where they were on a critical mission to aid persecuted Christians caught in the midst of a brutal campaign of violence. The region, which is situated near the Israeli border, is the top upheaval following coordinated attacks by ISIS, reportedly under the direction of the Syrian president. 5 churches, this is truly horrific. 5 churches have been burned to the ground. Countless Christians have been injured, displaced, or killed. And the entire community is basically being erased in what amounts to a targeted massacre. And in the crisis, only Israel and America have stepped in to help. And then again, we said there's a media blackout. Like, not many people know about this, Jordan.
No. I was going to say, Jen, before this, preparing for this interview, I did not know about that either. So again, the things that we don't hear.
Yeah. But everything hidden in the darkness is always brought to light. And so that's what we're doing today, everybody. And so with us, we have Steve Slepcevic. So he just returned from his mission from Syria. So let's get him on, and he's going to fill us in with the details. Steve, thank you so much for being here and agreeing to come on and just share a little bit about your mission. And so I guess to start today, Steve, just tell everybody a little bit about you and SRP and what it is that you guys do.
Yeah, just a little background. I've been in the disaster preparedness, response, and recovery sector for a little over 35 years, worked on about 14,000 plus projects. Everything from earthquakes, wildfires, civil unrest, security issues, mostly mission critical type scenarios. And we're a private contractor, so worked with many different groups over the years. When there's a specific mission that many others can't tread upon or can't walk into, and we move really quickly. That's what's made us really successful in this space, is our speed to response. So it's interesting when it comes to what we're talking about today about Syria. When the mission got called in, it was because there was over 2,000 Druze and Christians that were massacred in southern Syria in a place called Sweda. And when we got the call, I grabbed my top security partner, which is Byron Rogers, who runs my Sabre Defense team. I grabbed my top medical director, who is a paramedic, flight medic, 20-something years. And so we grabbed the core team and we flew to Israel. And right from the moment the plane landed, we went straight to the first hospital in Jerusalem and met with a little 8-year-old girl that got shot in the face, saw her entire family killed in front of her. And so we were there briefing with the doctors, how she got there from Sweda into Israel, where she was being treated in an Israeli hospital, right? And it was really heartbreaking because this little girl was dealing with some serious trauma. Part of her eye looked like she was possibly going to lose that eye, but she was asking for her father because she was saying how lonely it's in the hospital, right? So it was just, that was just one of many. There was another mom at another hospital that was closer to the Syrian border, and her husband, when they heard the gunfire and the invasion of these ISIS terrorists coming into their town, she jumped in her little minivan, her and her husband, her 2 boys, 3 boys, two young boys and one that was about 5 years old, and her daughter who was 8, and started heading out of town. As they're heading out of town, they started getting shot by snipers, and actually one sniper shot her husband in the head and the neck. He lost control of the vehicle. She then pulled him out of the driver's seat, jumped in the driver's seat, turned the van around, and headed towards another end of town. And as she thought she was just outside of that town, there was a van with 4 gunmen who just opened fire on her van. She lost control, tire blew on it, rolled the vehicle. The 5-year-old boy got ejected out of the vehicle, who was shot through the stomach. Her daughter was shot up on her leg and part of her arm. She was shot up on part of her arm. Her daughter was shot up on her leg because she shielded her daughter when the gunfire was happening. Then these ISIS terrorists run over to the vehicle. The 2 boys are trying to get their dead father out. And they tell the 2 boys to start running, and then they start shooting at their feet as they're running. Fortunately, the boys kept running in a zigzag pattern, which is like, I don't know who taught them that, but you never run straight. Right. And one of them got shot in the collarbone area, the shoulder area. But them 2 boys got away. They were like 9 and 11. Oh my. The 5-year-old who was shot, the daughter was shot, and the mom are still remaining. The ISIS terrorists then start recording it and saying, look what the Israelis did. Look what the Israelis did. Oh my God, look, we're taking him to the hospital. And she's like, what world am I living in? How is this even possible that I'm witnessing this? You guys just killed my husband. You just shot at my sons. You shot at our vehicle. You came from your van. You're now putting us into that van. And they dropped them off at a nearby hospital, videotaping them as they're dropping them off at the hospital and saying that the Israelis shot these people up. What? So it's amazing to hear these stories. And we're sitting there in the hospital room, and she's telling us the whole thing, how it unfolded, right? And, it's interesting because the little boy that was sitting there was completely shut down. And one of our firefighters, a paramedic, sitting next to him, and he has 3 little kids, and he's standing next to this 5-year-old boy, and he's playing with them, and he gives him a coin, and he takes his sunglasses off, and little boy puts his sunglasses on, a big smile comes on his face. And then in Arabic, he asked them, are these the superheroes? Right? Because these people have gone through so much trauma, right? The little girl that probably didn't make it through that night was in the intensive care that we went downstairs to meet with her. Then the Druze fighters, the Druze that were fighting against these people, the guy was going to the market on his bike, and a drone flew over and dropped a bomb, and it just blew this guy up bad. Another guy was in there who was actually shot in the hospital in the face. And that was where these fighters came in to a hospital, rounded up about 38 doctors, patients, nurses, lined them all up, and killed them all. But it's interesting because before they shot them all, there's one guy in the video, it's been circulating all over the internet. We saw this intel at the very beginning when it first happened. There's one guy who decided to challenge them and went to attack one of the fighters. Now, there's only 4 or 5 of them, it looked like, there at the time, right? And nobody else moved, right? And I think to myself, if those 38 people would have just stood up and attacked those 4 or 5 terrorists with the guns, they would have, I feel, just knowing my training, they would have easily overtook them. But how many times in life does somebody act on something that the Spirit prompts them to, and the rest ignore it?
That's right.
Deny it, suppress it, and go, I'm just going to sit here. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to do nothing.
Yep.
And it was amazing because they were going through, they burned 5 Christian churches, they destroyed 36 villages, and then they came in with bulldozers to level the houses so these people wouldn't come back to their communities. They blew up all the water systems, and the wells that they didn't blow up, they poisoned, right? So it's like a mass starvation, circle the area, and slowly to destroy these people. So they have to find a way to get out, you know what I mean, and try to survive. And that way, the Islamic regime slowly moves into that area, because as they were showing multiple videos and multiple scenarios, they'd walk in apartments and they'd just ask the kid, the husbands, fathers, kids, boys, whatever, you're going over the balcony. And then they just start shooting them as they're going over the balcony, multi-stories, they're just dying. They were throwing babies off roofs. They were slaughtering people. And they captured hundreds of women that are still kidnapped. So the official count has been blurry as to what it is. With our security team, we've pushed to find out where they're being held in or around the Damascus area, because the State Department deserves to know. And so when we first got in there, the thing for us was to get as much intel as possible, which then we met with the Druze leaders near the border. And the Druze are a descendant from Jethro, right? Which was Moses's father-in-law who healed Moses. So that's their lineages. They come from Jethro. They're not Christians. They're not Muslims. And so these ISIS terrorists would approach them and say, are you Muslim? And they would be, no, I'm Syrian. And they would ask them again, are you Muslim? And the person would say, no, I'm Druze, or no, I'm Christian. And then they would just kill them. And then, it's interesting because there was an old elderly lady who needed some life-saving medication, and it shows them in her apartment. And there's like, here's the medication. We'll give this to you, but you have to swear your allegiance to Allah and repeat after me. And as a Christian woman, she goes through this whole process to denounce God and Jesus Christ and claim her allegiance to Allah. The video doesn't continue whether she lived or didn't live. But what was interesting was there was a group of children in a Christian church that they walked into. It was like a kids' Christian school, right? And the ISIS terrorists were asking them to swear their allegiance to Allah. And the kids, all in unison, started singing songs of praises. Like, no, we're not going to. When you see the faith of babes, of children that are standing up against resistance, not fearing for their lives, like, no, we're not going to. And we're going to sing this song. One kid starts up and all the kids start singing.
Oh, wow.
And they ended up leaving those kids go.
Wow.
It's amazing.
That's a miracle.
Yeah.
That is supernatural protection. Yeah.
Yeah, what's learned in that process. And what people don't realize is these guys are apex predators. They're weak, they're useless, and until they get met with force, nothing changes. That's why when we went there, we made that mission. We then took the Druze, and then there was a group of congressmen, a large group that were meeting at the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. So we all went in there and we briefed them. We showed them the videos. We showed them what's going on. And there was a large group of congressmen in that room. And they were like, how do we not know about this? Do you know what I mean? How do we, with our intelligence apparatus, not know? Why weren't we not told about? Why do we have a private contractor coming and telling us this information? Now, IDF was there. Mossad was there. The team of intelligence was there to show them also additional footage. And it's interesting because then we met with Huckabee, and then we got permission from the State Department to be able to show up in Hadar, which is in southern Syria, where there's an outpost by the Israelis, which have their top doctors, pediatricians, neurologists, heart surgeons, and they're treating many of the people that are finding their way down to Hadar from Sweda and treating those patients, right? And the humanitarian aid is coming through that corridor led by the Israelis. And it's amazing on how people want to create this false narrative about what's going on. And during this entire time, we've been out there publicly talking about it, going, why is Free Palestine? Yeah, Free Palestine from Hamas, right? Why are we not talking about the Christians and Druze being slaughtered in Sweda? Why are we not talking about the 50,000 Christians in Nigeria? Why are we not talking about all this that's happening by the Islamic movement? And it's interesting because my family's from former Yugoslavia, okay? And Serbia was under the Ottoman rule for 500 plus years. And the Christian Orthodox never wavered. I mean, the bloodshed that the Serbian people suffered under the Ottoman Empire. There's books written about how the Turks could not invade, how they got destroyed trying to convert Orthodox Christians to Islam.
Mm.
And so that takes me to another very interesting thing. When you look at what's happening globally, and when the Assad regime fell, Assad was fighting with the Russians against these Islamic groups, right? That when you look at it, the US and the CIA was supporting these groups. And when you see the UN invite al-Jolani, who's the new Syrian president, prime minister, whatever you want to call, who was a former ISIS terrorist, who was on America's Most Wanted, right there in the top with a massive bounty, yet that part was dismissed. And now he is the prime minister of it. And in our briefing, to hear some of the congressmen, and I'm not going to name names, say these exact words. Well, he's our thug. Really?
Oh,
So with
wow.
the Syrian forces under the government's control, with vehicles from the Syrian government, with Syrian patches mixed in with ISIS forces that are kind of now morphed into the Syrian government, they've turned a blind eye to that because it is on purpose to create one Islamic state of Syria. But just because the guy went from wearing a terrorist uniform to wearing a suit and tie, being invited to speak at the UN, and the nations giving him a standing ovation, all you have to see is the UN is an absolute globalist joke. No one voted for the UN. And it was interesting because having gone to Geneva, it made me realize that is the head of the cabal. That's the head of the snake. That is Satan's throne. The UN, America just has one seat at the table. We take orders from them. Yes, there's a team at an administration right now that's fighting back against the globalists that control the world. Right?
Yeah.
And so to me, I feel that us in the Christian community, the people of faith, it is our job to surround the leaders of our country, inspire them, be that light in those dark places, show them, but always operate from where the Spirit leads, because none of us we're not taking this ego with us. You know what I mean? We're not creating anything about that's ego driven. If we simply tune into Spirit and surround these people and do the work that God has instilled in us to go forward, it is the only way that we're going to break from the system, right?
Yeah.
And it is being unveiled on every level.
Yes.
At this time in history, So,
well, let me stop you right there, Steve, because I want to bring this up too. Charlie Kirk, before he was murdered, had written a letter to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said, "You are losing the media campaign because there's so much, anti-Israel propaganda and different things, and from those on the left, but also the right. Like there's a lot of very strong and powerful conservative voices that are also saying, hey, they're anti-Israel." And so Charlie Kirk said, he had written that letter and said, you're losing the people. And so because people don't really know what's going on, you need to do a better job of telling them. And so at the beginning of your testimony, when you were sharing about them, the terrorists killing Jews and Christians, recording it and saying, it's the Israelis, is there must be a lot of this going on.
Oh, there's a lot of it going on. I mean, in the end times, it tells us discernment. Discernment. That's what we're at, right? Don't believe everything you see. Thank God for me, I have the opportunity to be at ground zero on multiple events. I was at January 5th and 6th. I was in the center of the BLM riots from Melrose, California to Buckhead, Atlanta, right? I seen how the international community orchestrated this. I saw how the feds orchestrated it. Do you know what I mean? So for me, when people are like blowing my stuff up and you're this and you're that, I'm like, no. And then when COVID happened, I do remediation in hospitals. So I have a whole environmental team. So we wrote the protocols because we were getting called on that. I had the first medical unit doing the COVID thing on the medical rescue with my bunch of my guys that are private that work for Miami Fire Department, right? So that was the first COVID department. So seeing how everything was unfolding and simply being a critical thinker and then tuning into what the Spirit tells me, right? And so I can't tell you how much hate I get when I speak out against these things, you know, but it's okay. I don't care. Charlie Kirk was a personal friend of mine. I did a 6-part docuseries with him called Border Battles. So we traveled back and forth all the time. And his thing was like, we need to show people what's going on. So millions of people coming across the border, the children that were drugged, the kids that were raped, that went to the rape centers, right? These are encounters we personally had, right? The prayer rugs across the desert floor, the fact that they would cross the border, there wouldn't be border patrol there for 2-3 hours. These people would literally come across the border, cross the field, get an Uber, and they're not even anywhere on anybody's radar.
Yeah.
That was happening every single night. They were inundated. And so even with my security team and my drone team, we were apprehending them in areas that they never expected because we're private. We weren't border patrol where they can tell when we did our shift changes and where we parked, and they had scouts in the mountains. So we were doing stuff that was extremely disruptive. And Charlie's goal was to expose it. Don't worry, don't put camera angles on it. Just show it like it is. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so when people think, well, how did all these ISIS soldiers walk into town and just kill all these women and children, you know, from the elderly to the young, to the old? How did they do that? That will never happen in the United States. I'm like, were you asleep the last 4 years? Were you in denial that hundreds of thousands of Muslim terrorists crossed our borders?
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. Did they go to the apartment buildings and get their EBT cards or their free Obama phones or their healthcare program? No. Right. They're at the mosques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're there. Intel shows they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're trying to implement Sharia law in Texas. I mean,
yeah.
Like it's crazy.
Steve,
yeah.
Would you say that's the biggest thing that right now that as Americans really to be vigilant for, or, you know, really the biggest threat right now to us has been that infiltration that has been building up specifically of, you know, Islam, really that whole agenda, the agenda of Islam, I'll say. Would you say that's the highest threat right now to America?
You know, it is I feel it's one of the highest threats to America. I just sat down with one of my BORTAC agents who's been, you know, Border Patrol, but he's on the BORTAC side of it. And they're out there just picking up all types of violent criminals.
Yeah.
They're based out of San Diego. And it's interesting because many of the trafficked children and individuals are all controlled by the cartels here. They work for the cartels here in the United States. The cartels are in the United States. And if they don't work and traffic sex and move drugs and run guns and do all the stuff that they need to do, their family's killed in South America. That's how it works.
Right. Okay.
And it's not hearsay. I know from the operations of actually getting and picking those people up and interviewing them. So it's not like I heard it third party.
Right.
This is happening every day in every sanctuary city. That's why Trump's going after it really hard.
Yeah.
Are people being picked up that are just been here and, you know, their immigration status yeah. Right. It went from, you know, deporting 3,000 a day to he's trying to push to 10,000 a day. But what people don't understand is like, well, I'm not against, you know, the people that are trying to hear for good, like that type of thing. Right. But wait a minute. If you have 20,000 people in one town that was the swing state, that's how the election was decided by 20,000 votes. And you dump 200,000 illegals that then vote down.
Right.
You as an American citizen, your vote doesn't count.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that right there is one of the most important things as American citizens we have is our vote.
Yes.
So, you know, you could throw all the other stuff into healthcare, the medical clinics, all the other stuff that comes in with you're now in a waiting list that it's no longer available for you. You went from waiting 45 minutes in an emergency room to waiting 7 hours in an emergency room.
Yes.
These are facts. These are stuff that I've seen.
Yeah.
So if people think that when it comes to talk about vigilant, there's going to be a shock and awe surprise, because if you ask me, the left is not good at, they're losing. You have to be demonic. You have to be having gender, like you're cutting your penis off, or you're doing some other stuff. Again, this is a Christian show, but what I'm saying is you're mutilating the children. You want to inject yourself with every kind of chemical there is, an OD on Tylenol and whatever else. Anything that this administration is doing that's good, you have to be so far left and gone to be a Democrat these days, right?
Yeah.
And for me, Charlie did an incredible job of the fact that spiritual first.
Yes.
Man, if we don't have our house in order spiritually, nothing else matters.
Yep.
People talk about being vigilant and being trained and armed. Man, if you are not grounded spiritually, you could be the best trained operative and you will lose. Someone will take you out. Because I cannot tell you, every one of our special operators is a man of faith. We pray together, we train together. And I'm telling you, when God says zig and you zag against his will, we've had problems, right? Because people haven't been tuned in. But when you're in those moments of absolute chaos, we call fog of war, you're going to tune into spirit, and spirit's going to guide you.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't keep you from being complacent, where people go, well, we're just going to be in prayer. Well, wait a minute. That's great. But as fathers, as husbands, we're called to be that tip of the spear. We're called to be the protectors of our families, of our wives and our children. Right.
Yeah.
And people, it's like going to Guitar Center and buying a guitar. That just doesn't make you a musician. It's going and buying a gun. That just means you're armed. You're not trained.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
So my wife trains, my daughter trains, my son trains. I take him to the range. My son, being on the spectrum, doesn't like it. It's a little noisy, but I put him through the paces, how to disarm, load a gun, fire a gun, really be comfortable around firearms, because he's ever in a situation, he knows where to go and what to do.
Yeah.
Right. I carry on my persons all the time. Go to the mall, go to the beach, go to church. And I remember my wife one time going, well, why are you carrying it like to the mall? Like, this is a high-end district. I'm like, because it's a soft target, honey.
Yeah.
Right? Most people are going to think that same way. I'm not going to carry a gun.
Right.
And in a situation, the only thing that stops an active shooter is a good guy with a gun.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
very true.
It is true.
That's the place we live these days. And it's unfortunate, but that's the temperature of the world we're in.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And Steve, you're bringing up such a great point, how you're talking about the spiritual again, how important it is. And for the guys on your team, you're saying they're all, the lead people are of faith. Are you seeing a rise in the men in general? I'm talking about just in culture, and especially your work with Charlie, because this is something that I know we've needed. It's been so many women who have been more of the spiritual behind being spiritual. And that's something God always foreshowed me in just prayer and, getting intel from him, is that the men, we are coming into a time where the men are going to rise. Are you seeing that spiritually in general, with men stepping up as the spiritual leaders?
Yeah. Jordan, it's interesting because I can't tell you how many times I've heard men say, I was kind of shy. I didn't really want to post my faith online, but yeah, he gave me the strength to publicly announce my faith. Yeah. And to me, I found that kind of weird, right? Because I remember getting deplatformed for 9 months, like just every account I had deleted, no warning, no nothing, because I was posting stuff from the rape trees on the border. I mean, this is real, right? I mean, I wasn't showing stuff. I mean, underwears and panties, but the story was, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
But it showed me that the censorship machine was on overload, but it didn't stop me. I'm like, you know what? Every corner, every coffee shop, every place where I can share, where men deserve to show up in our grid down trainings. And then it's interesting because a few weeks before Charlie passed, one of my close friends reached out. His name is Josie Parks. He goes, hey, I want to have Charlie speak at Win the Storm. Now, Win the Storm is a conference about contracting, disasters, making money. The original owner of it was, I'm just going to say it based on results and based on my experience, it was very ego driven. It was all about money. Mm-hmm. The new guy, very spiritually driven, goes, there's a lot of win storms that you can win in your life as a man, right? Financially, relationship, your walk with God. These are the storms of life and what it means to win in those storms, right? And I said, yeah, Charlie would be great. I said, he goes, can you reach out to him and see if he's available on this date? So I reached out to Charlie, and Charlie's like, yeah, I'm available. I can do that, right? That date works for me. I'll come in. And it's interesting because at the event, I got the opportunity to introduce him, and I shared about what one man can do. You know, and that was my core thing, is what one man can do when he trusts and tunes into spirit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you can see, if you pop on my social media on Facebook, you'll see the last presentation, and he shared it. I didn't put the Q&A. The Q&A goes for a long time, and it's just great because the conference is mostly contractors, first responders, that whole industry. And what shifted was there was so much hate that came out of it, right? Because there's contractors on the left, they're like, what's he doing at our conference? We don't need a keynote speaker that's political, blah, 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 all this other type of stuff. And then Josie called me panicking. I said, Josie, just trust the spirit, trust yourself. You made this call, just trust the industry needs it. It deserves it, right? We got to bring God back into our businesses, right? Across the nation. And in the first response, disaster recovery, that deserves to be front and center. And backstage, you know, Josie walks up, hey, I'm a big fan. Thank you for coming, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, but listen, I need you to tell the people that you're for the visa program, right? You know, a tracking of getting the legal workforce, you know, a path. And Charlie goes, I'm not. And you can see Josie's face turns red. He's like, what? He goes, no, deport them all. He goes, you're taking away from the American workers. You're exploiting these Hispanic people and the South American people. That's another form of slave labor. It doesn't work. Deport them all. Mm-hmm. Take your kids to work in the summer. Bring trades back to the schools. Acknowledge that there's respect in the blue collar trades. That's what built America.
Yes.
Instead of the South African lesbian butterfly studies you want to do, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is, right? Yeah. Like that kind of degree. What are you doing with that degree, right? We got to start changing what we're teaching our kids.
Yes.
And it was, and I could see Josie panicking, and then Charlie looks at me, he's like, why am I here? I said, Charlie, go out there, speak the truth. And he gets out there, and then in the Q&A, he goes, so how many people here are contractors that hire illegal aliens, right? Illegals. And there's like big part of the hand. He goes, oh, group of hands go up, and he goes, oh, so basically what you're telling me is I'm in a room full of felons. And then that broke the ice, and they all started laughing, right? Because he started getting really real in the Q&A, and it was hilarious, but it was so true and authentic. Yeah. And then after the conference, with Charlie's passing, just a few weeks, the entire shift in that organization, which has about 5,000 attendees for the conference, went from, oh my God, to I found faith. I found God.
Oh, wow. That is incredible.
Yeah.
That was Charlie Kirk, though. Yeah.
For the first time, the event is now being morphed into Win the Storm, the conference, and Win the Storm about the battles in the Christian faith in your lives in that industry.
That is incredible.
Huge
thank
shift.
you for sharing that, Steve.
Yes.
That is incredible. I bet a lot of people did not know that. So thank you for sharing that on here. People needed to hear that. That is truly incredible. Everything on social media right now are conspiracy theories about Charlie Kirk and, his murder. And so do you want to speak to any of that, or do you not even want to give it any attention?
I'll give you my few cents on it. Dan Flood, who's this close protection guy, I trust him. He's a close friend with my business partner, Byron Rogers. another man of faith, very deeply grounded in his Christian faith, runs an organization. We run a separate organization called Man of Peace. And I know his cameramen. I know his team all around him. They're personal friends of mine. I'm not a fan of Candace Owens. She lost me a long time ago, because there's things that have, when someone says something, it's not credible. And a person can go to a space that that thought process, that doesn't resonate with me. But that's okay. I don't work for her, right? I don't follow. There's a lot of questions around it, right? Yeah. But I know that people that are around him personally, and they're unwavering, they wouldn't be compromised. They would they wouldn't be compromised. There's nothing that would stand in the way from them saying, hey, here's the truth. You can kill me for it. You know what I mean? And so I find also it's unhealthy, because sometimes people want to make that the story, so that they're not talking about the good news in Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's it.
So when people go, look, okay, whoa, you can talk about it. How about I choose not to have that conversation? Let's have the conversation about what works and where is this nation going? Yeah. Right. So let's make a bunch of noise that's still distraction. And so I find that as we're moving through this process, we're going to be called to really, really tune in. I don't assign myself to any party. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I only answer to the man up high, and I answer to no other tribe, cult, group, side. That's it. Yeah. It's really that simple. And I feel with AI and manipulation and video and viral stuff, what is true, what is not, is an era we're entering into that is going to be really, you're not going to know what is. So don't listen to what your ears hear, what your eyes see. If you're not doing the spiritual work, you will be, he says, the most faithful will fall.
That was our message yesterday, Steve.
That's what I was going to say. Jen just said that verse. Yes.
Keep preaching it. That's so spot on. Yeah. Jordan, what were you going to say about that? Because I know you'll probably want to add to it.
No, I was going to say, Jen, you said that same verse that he just said about the elect, even the elect will be fooled. You quoted that, and you're so right, Steve. This is the era we are entering with the AI and just the acceleration of the technology. So you have to have the Holy Spirit. That's the only thing that is going to give you, which comes from just that personal relationship with Jesus. That is it. And that's what gives the eyes to see. And, our glasses to be able to see and discern and know truth. So I did want to ask you though, Steve, unless you had more, we didn't mean to cut you off. If you had more on that thought, please continue.
No, go ahead.
I really want to know, with the heaviness that you're involved in, specifically being involved with disaster relief and seeing the worst of the worst. I mean, even just the stories you already shared, I can't even fathom, seeing that and talking to those kids, and how I'm just so curious how you have maintained your faith through what you see and live through. And I know you'll probably say that's why you do what you do, but has your faith really been tested, and have you doubted it at times? And, just tell us a little bit about that, what you have to go through with questioning faith because of what you see.
Yeah, there is some things I struggle with.
I'm sure you have to.
And I'll tell you, when you see the evil and what it's capable of doing, and I find them to be soulless, there's parts of me that sometimes go, why would God allow it?
Exactly.
And I struggle with that, but I'm also reminded at the same time that we're all on our perfect journey. And sometimes there's massive shifts that happen in that process, right? Look at the Charlie Kirk's a perfect example, right? Yeah. And so I'm reminded of but it also it strengthens my faith, right? And I share the stories of where people have compromised their faith.
Mhm.
And it goes, whoa, and I'm going to tell you this. I really lost my stuff during COVID when I saw pastors closing their church down.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I was like livid. I ripped into these guys. I'm like, since when do you answer to man? You answer to God, and are you leading your flock or are you not leading your flock? And it's interesting on times I talk to pastors. I'm like, do you have a disaster plan set up for your church? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, in every wide area disaster that I've worked, there are those churches that close, and there's those churches that have the temp power, they're feeding the people, they have sanitation stations, they have childcare, people are getting fuel for their vehicles. It is a hub.
Yeah.
And
Right.
pastor, unless you're setting up your church as an EOC, an emergency operations center, and you're leading your flock, or you're going to wait on government and you're going to allow your people to be scattered wherever, stay open, trust the process, tune into God. Those people will show up. But don't stick your head in the sand and just, I'm going to read the scriptures and God's going to take care of it all. It's interesting because in the prison system, the most feared are the Islam, the Muslims, because they're the most organized. They have their enforcers, and they are very systematic.
Yes,
And
they
you
are.
have the Crips, you have the white gangs, you have the Hispanic gangs. And do you know who gets beat up the most and gets worked over? The Christians.
Yes. Yep.
They're disorganized. I'm Mormon. I'm Baptist. You're Catholic. I'm Orthodox. Right? Everybody's in their shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
But when God called the Christians to rise up, there's just one group. And so when I see how people are so divided and caught up in all the mechanics, that's how you overrun a group. And if you can keep people divided.
Yes.
That's what he seeks to do. To divide. He doesn't care if you're Catholic or Mormon or whatever. As long as you're not working together, he's winning. And that's what people don't understand. There's two things, Steve, that you said, and then I want to segue into what you actually just last said. But first, I wanted to tell you when you were talking about how you have to be tuned into the spirit and hear God's message, and not pay attention to all this AI. We don't know what's real, what's not. We have to let the spirit guide us. When I did a message about Charlie Kirk's murder, God said, don't watch anything. And he just weighed on my heart, and Jordan helped me with this, to look up his name. Do you know Charlie Kirk's name means Free Man Church? And then as I was getting ready to do my message, God weighed on my heart to look up Erica Kirk's name. Her name means Eternal Ruler Church. And so what you were just describing is the Laodicea church that wants to stick their head in the sand. I think this is the turning point back to you and Jordan's discussion about, are you seeing more men wanting to lead spiritually and wanting to actually get involved and protect their families, and women too? That is the Church of Philadelphia. That's the church on fire, the Eternal Ruler Church that is united, that is one, that could care less about denominations and cares more about what the Spirit is telling them to do. And so that was the message I got specifically for Charlie Kirk. And what just happened was the name meaning marking that moment in time when that church is coming, that Eternal Ruler Church.
It's very powerful. And the thing is, how you said, I didn't listen to social media, right? People don't realize that they're being programmed, because as your brain fires, it rewires and hardwires.
Yes.
And so these algorithms are changing the way people actually respond. In social engineering, it's like mass formation, moving people into certain areas. They did it very successfully during COVID. The messaging was so strong and so powerful. I was like, wow, right? With my son being vaccine injured 18 years ago, leading the greatest recovery of what health truly is, and treating his underlying conditions, it made me realize that movement with COVID was so the big psyop. But now, because everybody's on TikTok and Instagram, they're scrolling, these are all patterns of light flashes, and it makes you think a certain way. And it's interesting because one of my sisters is very deeply rooted in her faith, but has gone off the edge because I'm like, stop sending me these videos. I don't watch any of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's starting to actually change your behavior.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
We just talked about this, Steve. You're 100% right. It's awful.
And it's interesting because as I was raised in a Christian household, but like the Mennonites in the hood in LA, and we had no TV in our house ever. My mom still to this day is 89 years old, never had a TV. She says nothing's good on it, and we never had a TV in our house. I remember I used to go to my friend's house, sometimes spend a weekend at my friend's house on occasion, and I would watch TV. I would get sick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And it was interesting because when I realized it, people have been programmed for so long through these processes.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, stay off of it. Yes, for some information here and there, obviously to stay relevant, be very selective. You got to manage it, but get outside, get your feet in the ground, turn some ground soil, plant some stuff, get some sunlight, go on a holiday, connect with nature. Just
Yes, that's
live in the ether of what God created.
That's
You
it.
know what I mean? Step outside the city, out of the car, away from the electrical cars and the 5G towers, and find as much time you can in nature.
Yes, that's the key. That is the key. Were you gonna share something, Jen? Because I was gonna.
No, you go ahead. Were you going to talk about the tree of knowledge?
Yes.
Go ahead. You go ahead. You take it.
Because we just talked about this, and oh my gosh, dude, it was like 11 or 12 years ago now when I first started getting called, or just hearing God say, all right, start speaking for me. And even before all of this has gotten to the degree it did, but I worked with youth in a middle school and a high school, and I saw what the social media was doing, then. And I just remember making this presentation. I was going to start speaking in schools about hearing God's voice and trying to get the youth to put the phones down and learn to hear his voice without the distractions. And God highlighted one day the back of our phone here, this bitten apple. And I'm not just calling out Apple. I'm just saying this is a symbol for the technology. He said, why do you think this is not just an apple? It's a bitten apple. I mean, that is unbelievable. I was like, oh my gosh, this is unreal. And he said that was on the tree of knowledge, tree of knowledge. And today, that is our modern day social media, and the whole internet is our modern day tree of social knowledge, I call it. And we've never been meant as humans. We're not even designed to be able to be accessible to people 24/7. It's not natural, and it's why everyone's sick. And so it just sick with depression, anxiety, suicide, and I called that tree the tree of hopelessness in the presentation. That's what it all leads to. And it's just that's what God's saying. You have two trees, the tree of knowledge, don't bite from it. And that's what Jen and I were talking about yesterday. It's the technology. The other option is the tree of life. And that's everything you just said, Steve, going out in nature, being with people one-on-one, and being in the present. It's really being in your present moment. And that's what God's been telling me lately, because he told me get off social media for a little while, they'll fast. And he's said, you know what? The key to peace is presence. It's being present. And this is what this technology robs us of. You're either in the past or you're in the future, because everyone's seeing everyone's lives and comparing or thinking, I'm not there, I have to do this, even with feeling a pressure of what we have to do, because we know, you can post everything. So it's robbing us of the present, and the key to peace is presence. And this is why no one has peace today. So yes. Anyway, that was just a little bit of a rant, but this has been the main thing God's been highlighting. And you just, bringing that up, Steve, is this is the message.
Steve doesn't do that. Steve is boots on the ground there. So he doesn't have to go through social media. He doesn't have to listen to anybody else. He's actually there. And that's why we love interviewing people that are boots on the ground, Steve, because you give a firsthand account of what's actually happening, not what you've heard or seen through the internet. And like you said, potentially AI, I guess, manipulated video footage. And so that's why we value the work that you're doing. But I want to spend the last few minutes because I want to go back to Islam because we've hit on it a couple of times. But do you think, you said that the only two countries really helping in this Syrian altercation is the US and Israel. And there is such a push now to divide Israel and the US and like not support Israel or, vice versa. And so again, that spirit of division, but yet the number one baby name in England, the UK, is Muhammad. And, we're seeing this migration system where I believe I think it was Dr. David Jeremiah in his book said it's called Fata, where if you can't win with brute force, you go in, you take over the culture, you run for office, you marry the women, you turn it into an Islamic state. And so that's what we're hearing reports of. Steve, what do you want to say about that? What do you think about that?
When a nation gets bombed consistently, car bombings, terrorist attacks that come from one region repetitively over many decades, eventually you're going to go in and you're going to beat the crap out of that person. Mm-hmm. You end the terror on your nation. It's not any different than the war that the U.S. launched against Serbia and NATO bombed under Clinton and Senator Joe Biden, a Christian nation, on behalf of Albanians, Muslims that pushed into Serbia, that the U.S. with its CIA funded. Why? To set up one of the largest military bases in the Balkans to control it. Now the U.S. under Trump is pulling away from Kosovo. Turkey just delivered all types of military aid into a state that's Serbia, that's a de facto failed state that the U.S. created, this Frankenstein state. Turkey just supplied it with massive amount of weapons. The Islam movement in there is pushing out the Serbs in Metohija and Kosovo. And so now Serbia is up against the thing of going, oh, this is not going to be good. Do you follow? Because if you don't stop, if Israel doesn't stop and protect the Druze and the Christians, it'll be at Israel's border again from Syria. Because the way they see it is conquering the world.
Right.
Their stuff is not to coexist. And when people call a person racist, fascist, Nazi, homophobe, Islamophobe, you know what? In this day and age, that all I hear is you're normal, you're normal, you're normal, you're normal, you're normal, right? Yeah. Oh, far right, that means I'm normal. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I'm not far right, I'm not far left, I'm a child of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's not aligned with his word, it doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. So am I going to offend you? Hey, buddy, I'm going to tell the truth. If you're offended, my intention wasn't to offend you. But if you're offended, maybe that's something for you to take a look at. What's coming up for you? Right. What's coming up for you? Take a look at that. That's not about me. It's not my business. But I'm going to speak my truth. And I'm going to continue speaking the truth. I'm going to listen to spirit. And it's called feedback. You may look at it like, oh, that was mean. It was brutal. Well, maybe it was brutal to you, but it was honest. And you don't like it, then look at it.
Yes.
Right? And for me, at the end of the day, it's either working or it's not working. And I make no apologies. Yeah. I'm here for a short time. God has said, you know what? You're here to serve. I will lead you. He's put me in the most critical, most extreme conditions. And people like, how is it? You're 40 miles from the border. You're getting death threats from the cartels. And then even coming back from Syria, we got all kinds of death threats, for being there. By Islamic, I don't even know how to read it. I had people interpret. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's all noise, right? During the BLM protest, they posted my address on the thing. calling us a racist because we were celebrating the 4th of July. My wife's former Air Force, right? And they went after all her social media accounts, like, 1 stars trying to destroy our businesses. I didn't give a shit. I'm like, show up to my house. You guys are great on the fingers, on the keyboard. I fear nothing, right? My days are numbered anyway. But if I, for 1 second, hesitate to speak what God has put inside of me, I'm lukewarm. I'm no longer serving my purpose. And that's what I encourage Christians is like, when you see what Charlie did, if you step back from it, you've lost it.
Right.
This is where you lean in, you step into the unknown. If you say, I'm a believer, I have faith, I trust God, well, you're either 100% or you're 0.
Yeah.
Or 95%. But if they came at me, I would be maybe be 75%. No. Either you're 100% or you're 0. Friend, there's no other way.
Right.
That's it.
You're all in or you're all out.
Yes.
So true.
That is it.
Did you have any closing questions? We've got about 4 minutes, Jordan.
I do not. You know what? I think I've asked everything that I had to think of. So, no.
Well, Steve, just in closing, anything else you want to say about SRP, how people can get involved, and your websites where they can go to learn more, and anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, if there's first responders in the community that listen to this podcast and they're interested in being part of that team, if they have their credentials on medical response for disaster zones, mostly firefighters, paramedics, urban search and rescue personnel. We're also adding more firefighters to our private fire team because we do private fire protection. Obviously, you saw what happened in LA. We set up a bunch of homes and businesses for some very well-known people and some people in the administration currently that had a house in LA. We saved, right? That part, if there is high-level security operatives that are highly trained, whether it be executive protection or security, there's a special mission that we're working on currently. I can't disclose it on the show, but if there is former law enforcement that are, that have plenty of life left that want to get back into the swing, and they're retired sworn officers or sworn federal officers or security professionals, again, high level, that have their guard card and have all their stuff squared away, they can reach out to the Sabre team side of it. If people want a disaster plan, even a personal plan, they can email me or just put a request under srp24.com. There's a request form. I'll send them a template that I use and the gear and stuff that we find that works all the time, that works very well. I don't have any affiliate codes, programs. I don't do that. But if somebody's looking to support other stuff, I mean, right now, we're not looking for donations because we're looking to find the women and children that have been kidnapped. And that's a special operation that's off grid. It's not talked about right now. But what they can do is, if anybody's inspired to donate to Autism Health or anybody impacted by that community, that's a part of me and my wife's personal journey. It's a nonprofit that we run a very successful conference every year, but it's successful because of donations and because those that are part of that community, which Autism Health works alongside MAHA with that team. And we're there. I mean, look, it's a life of service. So at the end of the day, all I want to do is encourage your listeners that never make it about the money or your business, but find something also that is where you give back and you serve a life of purpose. Otherwise, you're going to live a life that has no meaning.
Yes.
Amen to that. Steve, it has been an absolute honor having you on here. We have learned so much, and I know our viewers are going to be blessed by the information and the advice and just the raw, real testimony of what you do, what your team does. We just had your wife on last week. Everybody, I encourage you to check out her interview on Q or Circle of Eden. Tracy was on talking about Autism Health and the conference coming up in Maha. And you and your wife are truly amazing and role models for everybody, Steve. Thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. Truly grateful.
Well, God bless you and the work you're doing. We'd love to have you back on. And just God bless you. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, God bless you and your listeners.
All right, everybody. We hope that this interview blesses you. And until next time, create your own Circle of Eden right where you are. Stay blessed.